Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, this here is my second podcast. My main podcast, Mod Chat, is one which is a little more refined, a little more edited, a little more organized, in which I come on and I talk to you all about things that I find new, interesting, cool, funny, maybe even do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. However, this here is not that. This here is my second podcast, Mario's Minute, in which I come on here once a month and I talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and I will say on that, I've been kind of talking about the last few episodes here, but I used to try and do a guest every other month, and then that kind of fell back a bit. That is completely on me, and now it's kind of at the point, it's like, look, it's not that we're never having a guest on again, it's just we'll have a guest on when we have a guest on. I can certainly say that at least. But either way, this is available in two different forms. First of all, Mario's Minute is available in a video visual form on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels in case you want a visual video component to it. However, just keep in mind there's not too much going on there. It's really just my channel background and then a cool looking, at least I think it's cool looking audio visualizer for it. But it's mostly there just because that's where most reach is, and that's of course also where the conversation is. So if people want to comment, want to chat, whatever it is, usually the videos are going to be for that. But I keep saying that this is a podcast, and if you want it in an audio only form, you can. Simply look up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, this is a podcast where I come on here, like I said, once a month, and I talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. And you know what? I was going to even have a joke as well, too, of like maybe this will just be the You Will Own Nothing and Like It podcast, because that's what we're going to be talking about. I do really just enjoy like nerding out, talking about like the gaming stuff here. Sometimes I'll talk about things that are just kind of depressing. Usually like in the gaming industry, things like that. I try not to share my own personal depressing things on here, because I'm aware everybody needs an escape. However, this was one of those things I'm like, you know what? This conversation is not fun, but this here, it's exciting at the same time. It's fun for me, I guess. We'll just put it like that. Maybe I'm a little bit of a masochist there. But we're going to be talking a little more about one of my favorite topics to discuss, which is you will own nothing and like it. And in order to push back against that, you need to push back against it and vote with your wallet. Purchase from DRM-free places. If you are picking up physical media, learn how to back it up, how to preserve it, and also voting with your wallet. Do not support. Okay, I should clarify. If you want to support ownership and you want to push back against some of this crap, do not support some things like this, such as cloud versions of existing games being released on the Nintendo Switch. We're talking about the first one because of some announcements with the second one here. This is going to be a mostly gaming-centric episode, so you know what? I like talking about games. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun one. So for those out of the loop, this ended up coming to my attention because there was a recent Nintendo Direct, because, I mean, this month was formerly known as E3 month, where I think most people are aware of it, but in the next 10 years, we're going to have people who are just completely unaware. So I guess I'll maybe put this in the history books for them. E3 started off in 1995 as, I believe, a more video game-centric retail business-to-business, how do I put it, like, conference spin-off of CES, where it was really just focused on the games. And that was, of course, where all the companies, you know, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they would even, you know, the other ones that were coming up, Sega, 3DO, and then all the developers, all the publishers, they would go there, they would demo their games, but the main thing there was really doing business-to-business sales, because you weren't just trying to appeal to a bunch of sweaty gamers, which is what E3 was definitely doing later on in its life, but at the beginning, and even at the core of it, it was really just trying to impress the salespeople there, as in like the people, like the heads of Walmart, Target, even Kmart when that was a thing, because you had to talk to them, you had to wow them, you had to wine and dine them, so they could be like, okay, this new PlayStation 2 thing is coming out, the PlayStation did really well, so we as Target how many units are we going to be purchasing from Sony to put into our DCs and to sell in our stores? That was where the real money was, not like the E3 reactions and all that stuff, although it changed to that later on, you know? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I personally really enjoyed, like, you know, E3 coverage and everything. But, you know, it died off a few years ago, so now in its place, we really just have all the companies doing their own thing. Around the same time, Sony does State of Play, Microsoft does their, I don't even know what their conference is called, man. And Nintendo, of course, does Nintendo Direct. And there's other publishers and developers who do their own little bits on that as well, too, which is kind of where it was starting to go the last few years. But there's a nice memory around it, because for people who are wondering why is this all happening in like early to mid-June, well, that's because that's when E3 would historically happen, and I guess just the time frame doesn't really change for some traditional things. Now, getting on that, even though we went on to a little bit of a tangent about talking about E3, getting on that though, why am I ranting about not owning anything? Well, you see, Nintendo ended up doing a Nintendo Direct, and it ended up being a pretty stellar Nintendo Direct. It was actually the only one I watched, and I know I'm not the only one in that, because there was people in my personal life who I was shocked were watching Nintendo Direct. And I think it was one of those things where it was like, in terms of like games media streams, the June 2026 Nintendo Direct was by far the most viewed stream out there. Which surprises me, but I mean, it's cool, because like, that means people are excited for these games. People are excited for the Switch 2. I'm seeing more and more people pick up the Switch 2. At this point, unless you exclude the Xbox Series S, and I can understand why people would do that, because, you know, it is the lower powered system. It's not like the PS5 where you have a digital and a disc version, but it's still the same system. No, this is a capacitated system compared to the Series X. So if you take out the Series S, if you want a game console from the main offerings out there, like the mainstream offerings, not getting, you know, like an emulation machine or something like that, I guess technically, well, you know what? I guess we can count a Series S as that. But if you're not wanting to get, you know, like an Abernac, like handheld or any of those consoles there, if you just want to focus on like the big three, the Switch 2 is kind of the most affordable and accessible, and it looks to be like maybe one of the more promising options out of all of them, especially when you have Xbox and Sony, who have had their systems out for now nearly 5 years at this point. I know we don't want to think about it. I know it doesn't seem like that, but the Xbox Series X and the PS5 are nearly 5-year-old systems. We're going to come up on that date very soon. Meanwhile, the Switch 2, it's just over a year old. It seems to be doing well, and it has a huge plethora of these Switch lineups. So that's also another thing. There's been a lot of people who want to either replay their Switch collection or maybe try it in better fidelity, or maybe they just like missed out on the Switch. And so they're getting the Switch 2 and they're just playing it like an original Switch, because there's a ton of great Switch games there that run even better on the Switch 2 now. So enough tangents, though. Enough tangents. This all came about because of one big announcement, which was Kingdom Hearts. This did surprise me, very much so, for multiple reasons. First of all, Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be coming out on the Switch 2. It's going to be a native game. It's not going to be a streamed game or anything. It will be out on the Switch 2 day one. That shocked me, to put it lightly. That shocked me. Pleasantly shocked me, but it did shock me. The next thing is that the other versions of the games, because Kingdom Hearts is not a stranger to the Switch. The Kingdom Hearts games were on the original Switch. Now, the only one natively on there, and by that I mean the actual Switch hardware itself was running it, was Melody of Memories. I believe that's what it was called. It was the music game that came out. There was a physical cartridge and everything. The other games you could pick up on there, kind of. There was the Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 and 2.5 remix. There was HD 2.8 Final Chapter, and there was also Kingdom Hearts 3 plus the Remind DLC. So you could actually play all of the Kingdom Hearts games on the Switch. The problem is you couldn't play all the Kingdom Hearts games on the Switch. The only one you could actually play on the Switch was the Melody of Memories one, and the other games, all the other ones that I mentioned, you have to purchase a cloud version of the game. Now, these were digital only. They sold like regular versions of it, but really when you played it, I didn't own them. I didn't play them. I didn't, mess around with it. But what you would do is you'd have to purchase it like an actual game or application, like a digital game. And then what you would do is you would then download that application, you could open it up, and as long as it was registered to your account and you had an active internet connection, you would then stream a version of the game that you could play. And that was it there. From what I saw, they weren't great. Now, I believe Square Enix was not the only one who did that. Capcom also did the same thing. Capcom did the same thing using Resident Evil 7 and 8. And I know there's a few other games. Like, there's a handful of other games that also had cloud versions on the Switch. Now, I did hear like one person one time, he was talking about his experience, I believe playing Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village on the Switch. And he said it was great. Now, granted, I'm sure it was okay as long as you had a wired Ethernet connection, because it's not just about speed, it's about the stability and especially the latency. And man, I will tell you, even if you're not doing competitive stuff, if you play online on the original Switch, if you care about your online experience and you want to severely reduce your frustration, you had to hardwire that thing in there. To the point where when Nintendo ended up releasing the OLED Switch, they sacrificed one of the USB ports on there to make room for an Ethernet port. And on top of that, when the Switch 2 came out, its dock also had an Ethernet port on there, which was something I was incredibly happy about. To the point where I have some friends, I've mentioned it several times, but I have some friends I have a standing weekly game night with. And when we started playing online on the Switch, I was like, guys, we all got to get these Ethernet adapters. At the beginning, I already had Ethernet. One of my friends did not have it, but he ended up buying one from my recommendation. Another one decided not to and tried to roll with it. I think the problem was it was so unpredictable. Like, sometimes he would be just fine playing with us. Maybe we ran into one hiccup. Other times, he brought the entire game lobby down, and we had to get onto his level because really, the game adjusts to the least common denominator and to the weakest connection in your lobby when you're playing, and it just ruined the gaming experience for all of us. And I remember when that happened, he was apologizing a lot. He did feel really bad, and he went out and he bought like the $10 adapter, and then it ended up fixing up the issues for him. But even then, even after that, we still had little hiccups and issues here and there. What I'm saying is Ethernet is important for that, and that was probably most definitely what was needed for these cloud versions here. Outside of that, I also saw people, in retrospect, talk about their experience with the cloud versions. And they actually said, yeah, the cloud versions of at least the Kingdom Hearts games, they said they're not really that good. Like, I mean, they're kind of playable, but like when you get in, there's connection issues you can have. They're laggy. Even one person was saying that if too many people were playing the cloud versions at one time, you would have an unstable connection. You would have a worse experience. Which, real quick, I know I keep going on tangents here, but real quick, this is why Stadia failed. I remember the whole conference and the announcement for Google Stadia, and you know what I clearly remember from that? I remember that they were advertising so heavily how seamlessly and how great and how easy it was going to be to play games on the cloud. That way, all you need is a controller and a Chromecast, and as long as you have those two, or not even a Chromecast, if you have the Stadia app on your phone, on your tablet, on your iPad, on your desktop, your laptop, whatever it was, all you need is a controller, and you hook it up, and then you can play. But if you wanted to do it on a TV, you had your Chromecast on there, you could do it through there. Playing games remotely like that is in a whole other league compared to video streaming. And keep in mind, Google, or I guess Alphabet, but they were still Google or Alphabet, the parent company of YouTube, which was integrated in here, which has seemingly unlimited money and resources to throw at video streaming platforms and such, and streaming in general. Like how many of you, I'm sure, are consuming this episode right now. When they were doing the live stream of Google Stadia, the video on the live stream started messing up. Like the video signal there. And I remember I just had this like dumb look on my face because I'm like, dude, if they are showing this to the world for the first time and the video stream, I'm not even interacting with it. The only way I could interact with it was I could like it, dislike it, or I could chat. But I'm not actually pressing buttons to control what's happening on screen. If they can't get a video stream working seamlessly and perfectly for one of their biggest announcements ever, yeah, the game platform's not going to be any better. And in short, Google, I mean, once they shut it down, they successfully memory hold it. If you don't really know much about Google Stadia, yeah, it's because when they end up shutting it down, they said, hey, we're going to shut this down and we're going to refund you for everything. So if you ever paid for a Stadia Pro membership, if you ever bought hardware through us, for example, controllers, if you ever purchased any games through us, we're going to refund everything. And that's kind of what they had to do. That's why it just went out and it just disappeared. Because they said, hey, if we're going to do this, we can't piss off people. And that's why everybody forgot, and Google could afford to make everybody forget about that. Which, again, is why nobody really talks about Stadia now. Because they didn't just shut down and close the shop and throw away the keys and run off. They actually refunded everyone. So I was actually thinking about this the other day, and if you were like a really big Stadia diehard who just decided to stick with Stadia, you had some pretty decent free gaming for several years because they had new games coming out on there. They had new exclusives. They had hardware. And what I'm saying is you could have balled out and got all the games, the pro membership, all the hardware and all that stuff. And in the end, you would have been refunded for everything. Like, just free brand new gaming for years. Getting back to these cloud versions, though, it's okay. It's all on the cloud, you know. Getting back to these cloud versions, though, the thing that singled this out was that they also said since the Switch was going to be getting the Kingdom Hearts games, so all those games I mentioned, HD 1.5, 2.5, HD 2.8, Kingdom Hearts 3, and of course Kingdom Hearts 4, they're all going to be coming natively to the Switch 2. I know that for sure. I don't quite know, and I don't really want to look it up right now, I'm going to be honest. Let's just say they're just on Switch 2, right? Now, the Switch 2 has backwards compatibility with the Switch, including applications, except for some exceptions, like YouTube. Yeah, there's still no YouTube native app on Switch 2, and the YouTube app on Switch doesn't work on the Switch 2. Even if you import it over and download and have a license, it just doesn't work. It's silly, but it just doesn't work. But on all of that here, they ended up not only delisting the cloud versions of the games, they also said that anybody who has the cloud versions of the games has a year to play them before the service shuts down, because despite all of these being single-player games, you don't play anything natively on your side. If you're playing Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Switch, or Kingdom Hearts 1, like Kingdom Hearts Final Mix through 1.5, 2.5 on the Switch. No, you're relying on a server somewhere that's hosting and playing the game for you, and you're just interacting with that. But even then, they said, hey, these games are all going to be coming over to Switch 2 in native versions, so you can actually disconnect the internet, download the full game to your system, and you can play it that way. But that's not the bad part. The bad part here is that they said if you own the cloud versions, not only you're going to lose access to them within the next year, but if you want to buy the native versions of them, you're going to have to rebuy them. But Square Enix is going to offer 50% off. So you get a discount on them, which is, I was in disbelief, but I started laughing when I read that because I'm like, man, you really own nothing. If you go this route, you really own nothing. This goes well beyond being in a walled-off garden, in a closed-source ecosystem, and paying for digital goods that have DRM on them. Because there was no good here to begin with. There was only access that was here. And I know people say, yeah, when you're buying a digital game, like right now you go into your eShop, you download a game, you purchase a game, you download it, you install it, you play it, you're paying for a license, not the actual game. You didn't even get the license for this, because you never had the game to begin with. Now, I do want to acknowledge a few things. First of all, if you yourself, the person who's listening to this, if you have a cloud version of a game and you acknowledge that you don't own it and you're okay losing that money spent on it, that's fine. This conversation's not for you. If you don't care about ownership at all, again, that's fine. This conversation's not for you. I've given up on trying to convince people. I will rant. I will put out the information. But if someone's like, yeah, I love cloud versions of games, try to convince me they're inferior, I'm like, I'm not going to be the one to do that. You need to get to that on your own, man. Like, you do you. Go ahead and just, as long as you have a fiber connection, I'm going to wish the best for you. But when it comes to stuff like this, I really think that if you're going to be in cloud gaming, a cloud subscription is going to be a lot better than purchasing, because they show you right here they don't have to uphold anything. They can shut down the service at any time. And just because a native version of these games ends up coming out on your system, and even if you have the cloud versions of it, they don't have to give you access to that. They don't have to give you a license to that. They can make you pay for it again. If anything, Square Enix didn't even have to give out the 50% coupons for them, but they're doing that. And when I'm talking about this, I just want to be clear, I am not in defense of cloud gaming here. I'm not in defense of Square Enix with what they're doing. I don't like cloud gaming. I don't want that to be the future. Whenever I try it, I'm impressed in some ways and I'm disappointed in many other ways. And when it comes to Square Enix, I think they should just be giving people who had the cloud versions of these games free versions of the native builds of the games. That's my opinion on it. But the reason why I'm saying I think a cloud subscription is better because this just proves, again, if you're going all in, or even if you're enjoying these cloud versions, you need to acknowledge that even though you are purchasing them, you're purchasing nothing. There is no ownership there. There is nothing. And if you're going to pay money for nothing, you might as well pay money for nothing, but get more out of it. So something like a GeForce Now subscription, which I know those are also changing now as well too. Of course, with where everything is at in terms of the gaming industry, in terms of hardware, in terms of, just everything there, It's the enshittification of all these services. It always seems to happen. But I know GeForce Now was changing their pricing structure, putting more restrictions on certain things, and there's other options for game streaming as well too. But that's why it's like, you know what? If I was forced to do cloud streaming, would I pay for these games individually? No. Would I pay for a subscription service so I could play those games as well as others? Yeah, that would be my option on there. That's what I would do. Now, this is just... I'm still in disbelief of it. It's funny to me. It's funny. Because even then, I remember when these cloud versions came out, people were not excited about them. Because even the pricing of them as well, too. Like, people are like, I have to be online, and then even so, it's like, well, I mean, most people don't only have a Switch. Even at the time, they would have another system, like maybe an Xbox One or a PS4 or even an older system, and you could get the other games on the other systems natively, physically, actual content on them, on your system, on your disc, for cheaper, in a higher fidelity, in a higher performance, I'm sure, as well too. You don't have to deal with the network issues on this if you're having one of those. If the server is having network issues, there's nothing you can do to fix that. There's absolutely nothing. But yeah, this is what it is there. I didn't pay for any of the cloud versions. I don't own any of these cloud versions of games, but I am of the belief that if you have paid for a cloud version of the game, what the company should do to make it right is, if and when they deliver native builds of those games to the system or even to a successor, anybody who has a license to a cloud version of the game should just automatically get a license for the native version of the game. Because really also they're kind of beta testers for that in a way as well too. There's just something really ironic and poetic and depressing but hilarious all at once, where it's like people really paid for these, and it was these came out 3 years ago. The cloud versions came out 3 years ago. But there's been people in the last 3 years who end up paying nearly full price for inferior completely digital only products that they did not have any sort of ownership of, and in less than a year they're going to have relinquished completely. Because if there's people who, let's say you bought all of the versions on there and you're just like, nope, I'm just going to get the most I can out of these, and if Square Enix isn't going to give me, the versions for free, then I'm not going to pay for them. That's fine. But within a year, you're no longer going to have access to Kingdom Hearts games on the Switch. That's it. Because the service is going to be shut down. I did some thinking on this as well too. I'm happy that we're going away, it seems like, from these individual cloud versions. I'm happy that this experiment, it seems like, failed. I'm happy that people aren't happy about this, not because I relish in their misery. It's not that. It's just, this is just kind of thing of like, I thought these were dumb and this was a bad idea to begin with. And if you got them and you enjoyed them, that's cool. But like I said, it's just, if you're going to be playing these versions, the cloud versions, you need to go in realizing and understanding you don't own this. A Blockbuster rental, to put in perspective, a Blockbuster rental gave you more ownership than a cloud version of the game. Because when you got a game or a movie from Blockbuster, you actually had the game or the movie right there available. You had the data available to you there. And guess what? You could even work your way into ownership when it was being taken out of rental circulation. Sometimes they would sell those copies of the games or the films. And if you saw them and you wanted them, you could buy them pre-owned. Or if you decide to just not return it, guess what? You would have to pay the late fees and the replacement fees if you held on to it long enough. And then if you paid that, well, I mean, it's more expensive, but you then end up owning the thing that was already in your house. You don't have those options with the cloud version of the game. That's something to remember. I just thought of that now. Like on the podcast while I'm talking, I just thought of that, I guess, description there. But really, renting games and movies from Blockbuster had more ownership than purchasing a cloud version of a game. I was even trying to think of this on the other side as well, too. And I was thinking that people might argue that older versions of games don't get used. And that's true. I mean, there are people, there's oddballs such as me. Sometimes I want to go and explore an older version of a game. I don't even think it's super odd on there. It's just, it's kind of different with how it's done now. I see it with current generations of people right now where, because we've kind of all stuck to the same live service games in a way, I've said it a few times, but younger people who are growing up don't really have nostalgia for individual games anymore. They have nostalgia for versions of games. They'll have nostalgia for like season 3 of Fortnite or specific versions or builds of Minecraft. But they don't get nostalgic for an individual game for the most part that they might have played on an old system. And that's kind of a sign of the times and how things are changing. I'm not going to get mad at them for when they came into this world and how they grew up, because they didn't have control over that. And if you, maybe that's just part of getting older as well too. It's like you can't just hold on to that. It's like you got to realize like, no, they grew up differently than you. Can't get mad about that. So some people might say, once you get a newer version of a game, you're not going to mess around with the older one. And generally that is true, generally. Like, for example, the Kingdom Hearts games, great example yet again. They've been re-released and remastered so many times. Let's talk about Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 originally came out on PlayStation 2. And then it has different versions across it as well. There's a Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix that was Japanese exclusive. Then it ended up getting ported over to the PS3. So if you had a PS3, all of a sudden, you can play Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. You can play Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix natively on the PS3. Then the PS4 came out. And we got it re-released on there. So because the PS3 had only some units had backwards compatibility, if you couldn't play the PS2 version of Kingdom Hearts 2, you could repurchase it for PS3 and play it natively. Same thing happened on PS4. PS4 could not natively play PS3 games. So if you sold your PS3 and your PS2 and you wanted to play Kingdom Hearts 2 in an official capacity, you could just buy it again because they re-released it on PlayStation 4. So you could play Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix on PS4 instead of PS3 or even PS2. And since there is backwards compatibility, you can now play that PS4 version on the PS5. If you have the disc, you load it in, you install it, and you can play it right there. Just great, right? So some people might be wondering, well, why do I need to play the old version on here? I still have that. That's fine. The thing is, even if you never play, let's say you didn't even sell it, right? If you just choose to shelve your old copy of Kingdom Hearts 2 on PS2 and you don't touch it, or on the PS3 or on the PS4, you still have that version. You still own it. It's there. And if at any point in time you want to pick it up off your shelf, you want to play it, you want to sell it, you want to break it in half, you want to give it to someone, you want to lend it out, you can always do that because it is something that you paid for and you do have that level of ownership with it. But again, you don't have that with the cloud version on there. I even want to say on this too, sold upgrades are fine. For the most part, I usually don't have an issue with that. I might get a little bit annoyed, but there's times I've even indulged in that as well too. I think one of the most recent ones was Animal Crossing, for example. Animal Crossing on the Switch. They end up releasing a Switch 2 edition, so you could either purchase the Switch 2 version, or if you're like many people where you have the original Switch version, you could pay $5 to upgrade, even if you have the physical version. You could pay $5 for a digital license that will then download a upgraded build of it on the Switch 2. And from there, you could use your original cartridge and play the Switch 2 native version of Animal Crossing. I'm one of those people, I'm like, even like the free upgrades are awesome, but even a paid upgrade, I'm not really against that there because it's an upgrade. But this cloud version shenanigan, it's not an upgrade. They're completely replacing it because they're saying, hey, the cloud version didn't run natively on your system. This one runs natively on your system. Since the old version didn't, we're just going to kill off the service. And we're not going to give you much of an upgrade path. Yeah, if you do purchase the new ones, the native build, you can transfer your save over, but that's about it there. I also believe that some people might try and argue with this and say, well, no, dude, they're selling, what are you talking about? They're selling an upgrade to you. They're selling an upgrade. This is a newer, better version. It's going to be native. It's what you're asking about. And even if you have the cloud version, you get a discount on here. In a way, yeah. But I also think if they were just trying to come through and sell you an upgrade, they would probably do something better. I feel like they'd probably do 75% off. They would even maybe do it free as well too. Especially because they're destroying the old versions of it. Because that's also the big difference. The upgrade it's optional even here, mind you. You're not forced to purchase it, but if you don't purchase it, you could say goodbye to Kingdom Hearts within the next year on your Switch or on your Switch 2. While as with the other versions I was talking about, the other examples, the Kingdom Hearts example on the PlayStation, you don't get rid of your old version. You can go back to that. If they release a native build of Kingdom Hearts 2 on PS5, an actual PS5 version of it, I can still take my PS4 disc, play it in my PS4, and I could even play it in my PS5. They're not going to destroy that version. They're not going to take that version away. At least they're not going to right now. and that's kind of my big impetus on it, right? I still, to this day, Kingdom Hearts, it's still one of my favorite franchises. The first one I ever got, it was the original release on PlayStation 2. To this day, I still own it. And that copy of Kingdom Hearts 2, it is in my collection. It is playable. It does work. And it was not bricked. It was not rendered useless, despite them re-releasing it on pretty much everything under the sun. Now, I also have a little bit of maybe an evil idea. I don't know. Maybe people might think this is evil. I'm not quite sure. But I'm like, like I said, I'm not the person who can convince people to say, like, people who love their cloud versions, they love their streaming, they love their convenience, and there's people who will just say, why? I don't want that. I don't care about it. And you know what? I just don't want to use my energy on that anymore. But like I said earlier in the podcast, I believe those people need to come to their own terms themselves, and they need to come to their own decisions themselves, and they're only going to learn really the hard way on that. So my little evil scheme, I guess, is I would want to see this done with Pokemon. And I actually I had to pull out one of these games, right? I have had this behind my little tester TV for a while, and man, this is, almost a relic of something else. In my hand right now, I'm looking at it. I have a Game Boy Advance, official, legitimate, not bootleg. I have a Game Boy Advance copy of Pokemon Ruby version. And I'm really talking about this happily here because I'm looking on the back and I still have the price tag for how much I paid for this. At one point in the last 10 years, I went to a thrift shop and I bought this for $1.99, which I don't think you can really do now unless you go to Japan and you start digging through a bunch of bins and you're able to find some copies of the Pokemon games there. It's not even about this version of it, but I was just trying to get this here to kind of remind me of I want to discuss this. I believe Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Leaf Green ended up releasing recently on the Switch, so therefore they're also on the Switch too. Now they're just the ROMs running through an emulator, and they are sold outside of Nintendo Switch Online. So even if you don't have Nintendo Switch Online, as long as you have online access, you can go onto the eShop, You can purchase, in this case, let's say Pokemon Fire Red, and you can get the license for it, download the application to your system, install it, and you can play it happily, right? And there's going to be people who say, man, you're paying $20 for ROMs, whatever it is. There's a lot of people who want to do that. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are just like, the emulation doesn't even have to be good. I mean, it should be, but it's like, there's people who are like, dude, I just don't want to dig out my Game Boy. I don't want to dig out a Game Boy Advance just to play this game from my childhood. I just want to, like, I will pay to play this game on the Switch. And there's many people who demonstrated that. There's many people who did buy, Pokemon Fire Red on the Switch. And they're playing it, and they're enjoying it. And that's awesome, because they're playing something they really like, and they're enjoying it. But what if Nintendo somehow, I know this is impossible, right? Because these are all, they're offline and, they're out there and all this stuff. But imagine if Nintendo put those out on there and they said, hey, if you have Pokemon Fire Red, an actual cartridge version of it, right? If you have Pokemon Fire Red, you have 1 year to purchase the digital version on your Switch if you want to continue playing it. And you can even transfer your save from the old version of Pokemon Red over to the new one, so you can continue on a modern setup. However, within the next year, every single copy of Pokemon Red in the world is going to brick. Doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter what you're doing. Come this date, let's say July 2027, if you have 20 physical copies of Pokemon Fire Red in your house, none of them are going to work. We're going to remotely brick all of them. They won't be working anymore. If something like that happened with like the Pokemon franchise, we would see very quickly how passionate people will get about it, how passionate people will get about something that they love, something that they hold dear to them, something that they really enjoy being taken away without their own input, a company doing that there. It's not like we're going to see riots in the streets or anything, but we're going to see a whole lot of pushback is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm like, you know what? This needs to happen with something bigger. Like, in order for people to like realize how bad this situation can be, brick an old Pokemon game, release a new one, say, hey, you have to buy it here. Oh, but by the way, if you own a copy of Fire Red, you have to still buy this new one. Because at that point, it's like, okay, it's not like a $50 or $40 or $60 game. It's a $20 game. Maybe they'll give you $5 off. I don't know. Maybe it's that. Let's just say that. So then people would probably get mad too, because it's like, you're going to destroy my old version, which works just fine. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want I want to have the option of being able to play it on a Retron or the Analog Pocket or my crazy customized Game Boy Advance or my old DS that I found in a shoebox. I do still want that option available, even if I'm not going to go to that directly. I feel like a lot of people would feel like that. So cloud versions of games are failing, and I'm personally happy to see that. It was a nice little experiment, but it's like, look, Capcom's done it. Hopefully they're going to be reversing that. Square Enix did it. They're reversing it. Google, one of the biggest companies out there that has seemingly unlimited money to throw at this stuff, they threw so much money at this. They took a whole loss. They took a whole giant loss on their entire platform. It wasn't just one game. It was an entire platform that they deplatformed. So yeah, I personally believe, my last thing, and then I'll move on from this. I personally believe that the future, like the future will probably be something similar, like streaming all digital and all that. And the best thing that we can do if you don't want to support that is just to push back, play your games with native builds on native hardware. If you have something like a Pokemon game like that, still have the cartridge, but also you can back it up, emulate it, do what you want to on there. It's yours. And vote with your wallet. That's also really important as well. Vote with your wallet. Because I'll say this, for the cloud versions to exist in the numbers and as long as they did, that means that there was enough sales there for them to continue to test the waters and see how it was. So that's that there. Now, another thing with all this, we're talking about, games media, physical media, all of that. One thing that I've noticed as well, which has been a bit interesting to me, has been I have friends now who are going back to physical releases with the Switch 2. And that's just kind of where the industry is right now. Of course, we're still seeing issues with RAM prices being high and therefore flash storage being high, micro SD cards, micro SD Express, regular SD cards, and of course cartridges. Because these like the Nintendo cartridges and such, they're going to use flash storage. The console itself, it uses flash storage for the eMMC. It does all that, like on the Switch and the Switch 2. Now, the Switch 2 has been really annoying when it comes to physical releases on there. And there's a few different variants of it. There's, of course, the dreaded game key card, which I have a dirty confession. I own 2 game key cards. And my I guess not opinion, my reasoning for it, let's just say that, right? My reasoning was that they were both used. No. One of them, sorry, wow, it's even worse. One of them was used, and it was a game I really wanted to play, and it was right there, and it was affordable. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to download it anyways. So since it's used and it's really affordable and it's a game I'm wanting to play, I'll go ahead and do this. The other game I ended up picking up was because I was traveling at the time it came out, and I really wanted to play it on some more travels. And the only main system I had with me was my Switch 2. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to break my rule a little bit. I'm going to pick this up because I do want to play this on Switch 2, but I would like to have a physical copy of it because I'd like to have something on the shelf. And then if I ever say, hey, screw this, I can still sell it, So there's that. However, there's been a lot of games that have released physically on Switch 2 that are just put onto game key cards. And game key cards are really just a license. That's it. You take the cartridge, you put it into your Switch 2, and you download the entire game. You quite literally download the entire game. You have to have an internet connection. You have to have a Nintendo eShop account or Nintendo account or Nintendo Network ID. No, that's the old one there. But you have to do that. If you have a completely offline Switch 2, that game key card is completely useless. There's also the traditional cartridges where the full game is on the cartridge. And then I believe there's also the hybrid ones as well too, where they are like, for example, like Metroid Prime 4. I feel like there's a fourth one I'm missing because see, they don't make it easy. But the hybrid one I'm talking about, it is a physical Switch game on there. But when you pop it into, so it works on a regular Switch, but if you pop it into a Switch 2, it will detect as the Switch 2 build of the game. And therefore, it will allow you to, typically you need to download an update or a patch, but then once you do that, you're able to download that patch, and similar to what they did with Animal Crossing, you're putting a Switch cartridge in to the Switch 2, but you have access to the Switch 2 version of the game, so you have access to all the benefits of running it on a Switch 2, not just being emulated on a Switch 2, running natively on the Switch 2. So, like I said, the one example I'm thinking of with that one is Metroid Prime 4. Now, going back to this, the full cartridges for the Switch 2, because you also have to keep in mind the Switch 2, just due to how it is designed, the flash storage requirements are more pressing on there. So you do get 256 gigabytes of storage on board, but it's much faster storage than was on the original Switch. The cartridges also have to be fast, and the micro SD cards also have to be fast. So that means you can't put an original micro SD card in there unless you just want to put like photos and images on there. And I don't even know, to be honest, because I don't have one in my Switch 2. I don't even know if you can play original Switch games on there, because you can do that on the PS5. On the PS5, you can hook up a USB 3.0 drive to the system, and you can install PS4 games on there, but you cannot install PS5 games, unless, of course, you have a jailbroken system. And if you do that, there are performance issues. There's slowdown. There's all that stuff. So it does really need that extra speed and that extra boost on there. But with the Switch 2, you need the micro SD Express card, because with that card, that's going to give you the much closer in parity speed and everything that you'll need compared to playing it off a cartridge or even installed internally onto the system itself. Now, the main issue is that not only the games have gotten more expensive, but pressing them has gotten more expensive, because getting that kind of flash storage, from what we know, at least from what, we've heard and's been reported and all that, when you are publishing a game and you want to put it on a cartridge, you have to quite literally purchase the cartridges from Nintendo. And they vary in price depending on how much storage is available there. Now, with the Switch 2, I believe what I was hearing, the only size that was available was 64 gigabyte, which was expensive because it was also much nicer flash storage. So there were games that were coming out. Like, for example, Nintendo's first-party games, so we are talking about Donkey Kong, Mario Kart, any of those first-party games, like Kirby Air Riders, those are all pressed onto the 64 gigabytes cards. You can have a completely offline system, pop it in, you can play it, right? The entire game is there. Even if the game is only 3 gigabytes, it's there. Nintendo seems to be the only one who is consistently doing that because, for example, even though it's not Nintendo, people think it's Nintendo, the Pokemon company did a Pokemon Pokepia. Pokemon Pokepia physically is not an actual cartridge. It is a game key card, and it sold really, really well. But there's more games I'm starting to see now that are being pressed onto actual cartridges. There was actually several I decided to pre-order. I believe the ones I pre-ordered, this one I got the original one of it, not the Switch 2 one. So Coffee Talk Tokyo, that's going to come out on an actual cartridge. Mouse PI is coming out on an actual cartridge. I think it's Kombini or Kokombini, one of the two. It's a game where it looks really cool. You end up running a kombini or a convenience store in Japan. That's going to come out onto a physical cartridge. So it looks like Nintendo's been creating more options for developers and publishers to put their cartridges on, to put their games onto. Because if you're just a little indie studio, and even if you really, really, really want a physical copy of the game to come out for Switch 2, it just doesn't make much financial sense if, let's say, you're selling your game digitally for $20 and all you can do is purchase the 64 gigabyte version of the card and your game is like maybe 2 gigabytes in size. You're going to have to price it to a point where it's going to lock out a bunch of people from buying your physical edition just because it's going to be so much more. Like, you're going to put it at a price where people will be like, okay, at that price, I might as well just get the digital version because I really don't want to overpay for this unless they're going to make a really crazy collector's edition or I absolutely love this game or I'm just a diehard collector. So with all of that, I've been surprised, happily surprised though, that I'm having friends who are starting to go back to physical. I have two best friends, right? And I have more, but these are two best friends that I'm thinking of in this example here. One of them ended up just going all digital on his Switch from day one. And he even said, he's like, yeah, I didn't really want to do it, but I just decided to try it out and it's so convenient. So during the Switch 1's life cycle, he was digital pretty much the entire time. I think he has, I did get him one. I bought him one game. So outside of probably quite literally one handful of games, he has all of his games on his system as digital versions of the games. Another friend of mine, I believe he was getting some games physically at first, and then he decided to cut over to digital. So he did the same thing. Now, these are both friends who, they love the Switch, they messed around with it, they were mostly using digital versions of games on their ecosystem, and now they've both upgraded to the Switch 2, and they are, well, one of them has been heavily considering it. I just don't think there's been a game that's come out yet that he's wanted to buy physically. The other one, he's already cutting back over to physical. That's the funny thing. And the main reason why they're saying this is because the flash prices are just so expensive. There's been several times I've looked, like I don't have a micro SD card in my system. Whenever I do put one in there, I want to get a large micro SD card. I already did this whole rigmarole with the original Switch. Like, I started off with like a 32 gig card, and then eventually I got a 64, and then, later I got a 128, and then I got like a 256, and I think now I have just like a 1 terabyte in there. But I was like, I don't really want to keep doing the incremental upgrades because that's kind of annoying, right? So the Switch has 256 gigabytes on board. Now, whenever I do want to get one, I want to get like minimum 1 terabyte for my micro SD card, kind of go big or go home, right? I can get a 256 gigabyte card, so I could, double my storage for about $50. From what I see, like the lowest end ones are just under $50. But I'm like, I don't want to just match it. I want to greatly exceed what is already on the system itself. And even just doubling that is more than double at times. Like you're going to be paying around $100 or maybe even more than $100 for a 512. And I'm just like, well, I want even more than 500. Like I want more. I want more on this. I want to download like everything, you know? Because even though I have a lot of physical games, I also have a lot of digital games on the Switch, and I guess, you know, now growing the Switch 2 as well. But at the prices I see, I'm just like, you know what? I don't play 50 games at the same time. I have my library, I have that there. But for the digital stuff or the things I have to install, you know what? I'm just really going to install what I'm playing. And if I have to move some things around, if I have to delete them, if I have to re-download stuff, it is what it is. That's fine. I can be temporarily uncomfortable if I'm super uncomfortable with the price. That's my opinion on there. But it hasn't just been me. My friends have had these same reactions as well too. They've had the same thing, and they've been like, you know, there's not that much, like for what I have, my library and all that. There's not that much storage on the Switch 2 to sustain it. I don't want to go out and buy a micro SD card express. And if it's a game that I want to buy anyways, it's nice if I could just get the cartridge and load it in so that way I don't have to take up, I don't know, 20, 40, 60 gigabytes of storage on my internal system. Even I myself, I kind of realized that as well too, accidentally. Recently, and I said I was going to do this at one point, and I finally was able to cave because the price was right on it. So I was able to, you know, get it for a pretty good deal. But my Switch 2 came with a digital game. When I got my Switch 2, it came with Mario Kart World. That was it. It came with Mario Kart World. And I want to say this game was just over 20 gigabytes, right? And I kind of just forgot how big it was. But, you know, there was other games I was getting. I was installing updates. I was getting content. There was even digital games I was purchasing. And then I was able to find a good deal on a physical copy of Mario Kart World. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get the physical edition. And then when I went in, I said, you know what? Since I have it physical now, I have no need for the digital version. I can just delete it. And if I ever need to, like, for example, if I really want to play it and I forgot or I lost my cartridge, I can always re-download it. So it's nice to have the peace of mind. But then when I went in there and I saw how big the download size was and how much space it was taking up internally, I was like, wow, you know what? It's going to be really nice to delete this off my system because I can actually make room for other games that I want to play or that I've bought. And I was able to do that exact thing. So it's really nice when it's like, when you're dealing with install sizes that are that big, that large, it's really nice if you can just not install the game. And you can do that off of a cartridge. So maybe a smaller game, okay, I can see, you know, the difficulty on there, sure. But a larger game, something like, you know, Mario Kart World, where that's like a 15, 20, 25 gigabyte game, something like that, you can do a lot with that amount of storage on there. If you just have it off the cartridge, that's pretty nice. But that's been a nice little shift in the tides there. That's been something nice that I've seen. It was a very pleasant surprise that people are starting to go back to physical ownership. People are starting to see the benefits of it again. And I'm not going to deny, because even they said, they're like, yeah, but it's like, even these same friends are like, you know, I'm starting to go physical again, but man, digital is so convenient. It's so convenient. I'm like, I know, but you also pay for the convenience, man. Like, it's, you know, you can make your decision. You can even do both. You can do that, but there is a cost to the convenience on there. And I'm happy that more and more people are understanding that. So there's that there. Now, I had to dig into my archive a little bit to see what I was going to be sharing here, but you know, we're going to go over this episode. It's definitely going to be over an hour because I got kind of verbose and excited, and I got passionate talking about my topics. It's cool to be excited about something, okay? It's not cringe, it's cool. And even if it's cringe, I'm like, I don't care. That's fine. This is stuff I enjoy talking about, you know? And I'm happy that even you all are listening, so thank you for hanging out. But I want to share a game store story. I'm just going to share one. So this is, if you don't know, for a little bit of background, I used to work at a local mom and pop video game shop. We had 2 locations. I worked at the both of them, and the shops have long been defunct at this point now. They've been closed for many, many years now, but I worked there for about 2.5 years while I was in high school. I ended up quitting because I was going to college, so I wasn't going to be working at the game shop anymore, just kind of my own decision on that. And then on top of that as well, too, I was also just really thankful for like the time and opportunity that I had there. I was working there from 2009 to 2011, so it was like right in the midst of, the seventh generation of games. So it was a really cool time to work there. A time that we certainly won't get back, but support your local video game shop is what I'm saying. Now, this one is kind of, I've held on to this one for a while, and this is maybe a little bit more of a discussion, but it's talking about people in general stealing cases, and this is something that kind of always threw me off. Now, to paint a little bit of a picture, like I remember when I started shopping, like at, secondhand stores and all that, I was going to places with my parents, and we would go to shops, and I remember like legitimately the first time for sure, the first time I end up going to a shop, my mom saw something that I might like, and she opened it and she's like, "Oh man, they stole the CD." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, they stole the CD." Because she opened up the case and it wasn't in there. Now, this has been for anybody who doesn't know about this standard, because it is kind of changing, and I do want to get to that. Typically, what game shops will do is they will put their cases, even with the manuals and all that, they'll put the case out on the shelf. So you can go, you can peruse through the games, you can look at them, and then when you see what you want, you see the game, you can check the condition and everything. It's like what GameStop does, for example. But they don't put the actual contents inside of the package. So if you open up the case, there's no cartridge, there's no disc, but there could be manuals and stuff in there. So when you come and take it to the front and you purchase it, that's when they pull the disc out from behind the counter, and then they load it up into your case, and then you can be on your merry way. Now, I remember when I first learned about that, I was like, oh, okay, that's a little inconvenient, but that does make sense because, people will be stealing stuff. And I remember the first time I really heard about this, it was when I was a young kid at a local shop, completely different than the one I was working at. But I believe it was the manager there. He was talking to someone, and he said he would mess with people because he was saying that there would be people who were just straight up stealing cases. And he's like, yeah, I don't know why they do it. I think they just, actually, I think I know what it is. I think they just don't check. And it was a music shop. And he said, like, what he would do so many times is there'd be people, they're looking around for their music. They're getting the cases. And then, like, some of them try to hide them. And then others will just try to walk out the door really quickly. And what he's done, the people who walk out the door, instead of running after them, he's just like, hey, are you going to buy that? Hey, did you want to listen to that? I think that's what he says. He's like, hey, do you want to listen to that? And they like look back kind of confused at him. And be like, yeah, the disc isn't in there, right? Like if you want to listen to it, like there's a listening station right here. I can pull the disc and you can listen to it if you want to. So that's a fun way of messing with people. There's also been people, of course, like even when I was working at the shop, they would, open up the case and just be interested. And if they weren't familiar with the setup, they would be confused as to where the discs were. So I had several people who asked me, hey, where are the discs? And I said, oh, they're all behind the counter. And I would just explain to them like, no, we just keep it here for security reasons. So that way the cases are out there and the contents, the actual goods that you're paying for are going to be behind here. And if you want to look at the condition, if any of them are scratched or anything, if any discs are scratched, we do fix them up behind here, but I'll show it to you. I'll gladly show you the condition. We can even test it before you buy it. So then once you explain that to people, they typically understand. I've never had an issue with that. But the thing that gets a little fun with it is that there were some games, and I remember even the first story I talked about there, the guy who was, he'd call out people. He asked if they wanted to listen to his CD when they were walking out with the empty case. The first time, like when this was happening back then, kind of the phenomenon that we started to see was like, some of the games we actually have to keep behind the counter or behind glass, even with the case and everything, because it's so just like, and it was mainly PS1 RPGs. It was like, yeah, actually these PS1 RPGs are valuable enough that at times, if you have the disc only version or you have the case and the cover art and the manual, but no disc, the case, cover art, and manual is more expensive and it's worth more than the game itself. So there were some games, if you wanted to, not lose out on that, you had to even keep the case behind. And the thing that's like thrown me off, it's not been that. It's like that concept, I completely understand. I get it. But I think the thing that's thrown me off is now there's been so many times in many recent years, I've gone to game stores and they've kind of gone the opposite way, where I'll go onto the floor, and some game stores do like wrap up their games and all that stuff. So it's like, they put like plastic wrap on them and everything. Even though there's still ways to bypass that, of course. But there's other stores where they just leave their cases right there. You can peruse, you can browse, you can do all that. And then I open them up and the disc is in there. And sometimes, because again, I've been to many game shops, I've worked at a couple game shops, sometimes we forget to leave the disc in there. So usually what I do is if I like open it up and I find one, I'll like bring it up to the counter and be like, hey, excuse me, that you guys left the disc in there. And then they always appreciate that. However, there's some stores where I will do it. I'll check like 2 or 3 games and they all have the discs in there. And I'm like, wow, so you can just snag the whole thing. I'm not trying to do that. I want to support the shop, but it surprises me so much that we've kind of just gone from caring so much to not caring. I feel like we're going to reverse though, because something that I've been talking with my girlfriend, I've been talking with so many people about this, just like looking at different trends, not even related to gaming, not even related to what we're talking about. What's old is new again. When something goes out of fashion, when something goes out of style, give it enough time, it's going to come back. There's going to be interest again. There's going to be popularity. There's going to be other things. You know what I was talking about with her last night? Last night, I was explaining to her how exactly Sonic the Hedgehog came back and how Sonic is debatably bigger than he ever has been, even back from the 90s. He is bigger now than he ever was in the 90s, and that is something I'm happy to see, but I was absolutely shocked by. So, well, thankfully we didn't really have people, at least knowingly, we didn't really have people stealing cases there, but that was certainly a case to be dealt with. Many shops did deal with that, and typically the way we did it was like the games, even like the newer games, like a $45 or $40 game, we would put the cases out there. But the stuff that was really valuable, so, one that was like, I think Persona 2 Innocent Sin, we had a complete in-box version of it, and I think that game was worth like $200 or so. We put it behind the glass. Because, we're not going to separate that out. And that was one of those where it's like, yeah, even if someone just steals the cover art and the manual and the case, that's still going to be worth a good amount of money. We don't really just want to have that sitting on the shelf there. So maybe more of a discussion point as opposed to a specific story on there. But you know what? That's one I've been kind of wanting to share for a while. So now that that's been done, we're going to talk about some of the games that I have been playing. And there's been several that I've played around with. One of them was on, actually, most of them have been on Switch too, funny enough. I guess I'll just share the one that hasn't been on there. Are We There Yet? This has been a game that my friends and I, like through our friend group where we have our game night, we've been playing on there. It is funny, it is stupid, it is frustrating. It's one of those things where it's ridiculous at the same time, even to like describe to people, because the best way you could describe it like very quickly is you and your friends play as bald fat guys and you're trying to move an RV. That's all it is. It's one of those friend slop games. It's fun, it's funny, it's ridiculous, and it's one of those games that's even funny just to describe to people, because the girlfriend, she's had to do this a few times. Like there's sometimes like she's talking to people like while I'm doing my game night stuff. And there was one time she was kind of frustrated. She's talking to a group of friends and she was like, yeah, no, he's just like talking about me. She's like, yeah, he's playing some game right now with his friends. They're like, ooh, what's he playing? And she's like, I don't even know what it is. They were playing something really cool before, and now they're playing this like stupid game. And they're like, oh, what is it? What is it? She's like, I don't even know what it's called. It's just about like fat guys smoking in an RV. One of them is instantly like, wait, are we there yet? And she was just shocked, because she's not nearly as much of a gamer as I am, but she was just shocked that he was able to pick up on that so instantly. So yeah, fat bald guy smoking in an RV. That's really all it is there. These ones are technically not, I mean, I've played them even though they're not full on here. I did want to try and see how Kingdom Hearts 3 was on Switch too. So I end up playing the demo that ended up releasing. I was actually pleasantly surprised that there's been demos that have been releasing actually. But the Kingdom Hearts 3 demo ended up dropping on there. I mean, you can finish it within like an hour or so, and it's just going through the first world, which is, kind of mid in all honesty. But it was interesting to play because the last time I played it was on PS4 Pro, and I've only played through it one time, and then I played the Remind DLC, and the Remind DLC was okay, but it still has the same problem it had before, in which I used to really enjoy Kingdom Hearts for the story, and I'd get through the gameplay to get through the story. And in Kingdom Hearts 3, I really didn't really like the story. I really didn't like the story. I really didn't like the cutscenes. I didn't really care for it that much. You're kind of getting through the cutscenes to get to the gameplay because the gameplay is actually really fun. It's really nice. It's tight. It's well refined. It's awesome. It's fun to play through, you know? And because I've played it before, it actually just got to the point I just started skipping the cutscenes, which I feel like would have been unheard of for me years ago. But I'm just like, I've already played it. It's fine. I just want to see how it actually functionally plays on the Switch too. And honestly, not bad. I played it portably. I was pleasantly pleased with how well it was running on there. I don't know 100%. Now, when I say this, I haven't watched any Digital Foundry footage. I haven't seen any analysis. So I'd actually be curious to see if people who play this on Switch 2 have the same thing. I noticed at least when I was playing it, and actually I played it both. I played it in docked and in handheld mode. But when I was playing in handheld mode, I just kind of noticed there was a little bit of like an uncomfortable frame pacing. Almost like there was just like a stutter that kept happening. And it was really subtle, but I was a little annoyed with it because I'm like, I don't think this should be stuttering. I don't think there should be a frame stutter on here, but whatever. Okay, I'm not a developer. Now, the other game I end up playing, which was very good, which I'm excited for. By the time you all are listening, it's going to be almost out with Star Fox. Now, if you listen to the last episode, I did end up finishing Star Fox on Super Nintendo through Nintendo Switch Online. Now, there's a new Star Fox game coming out on Switch 2. I have it pre-ordered physically. I'm happy about it. I'm looking forward to playing it. But there was a demo that came out, and I did something so rare of me that I haven't done in a long time. I played through this demo multiple times. That's how fun it was. I'm really looking forward to this game. This is actually the first game in a while I've been looking forward to. And one thing that didn't surprise me, but I guess it surprised me the people who were excited about it, and it did make me happy. I saw so many people get excited for the Ocarina of Time remake. Now, the thing that surprised me, genuinely, was that it's coming out this year. That shocked me. That absolutely shocked me that this year we're going to be getting it. But I had people message me, like friends who were just like, one of my friends, you know, I'm not going to put him on blast. I won't say who he is, but he actually told me that he was so shocked to see that, and he thought he had lost his love for gaming, but he loves Ocarina of Time, and he said he like legitimately teared up when he found out about the remake. He instantly went out and bought a Switch 2. That alone was enough to do it, and he was so happy because he's like, dude, I thought I was completely done with gaming. I really thought I was completely burnt out, but no, this is pulling me back in. I was really happy to see that. There's been a lot of people who are like that. Like, there's a great library of Switch games that are compatible on the Switch 2. There's more and more Switch 2 games that are coming out, but this one, Ocarina of Time, certainly seems like the game that's tipping the scales for a lot of people who are saying, yeah, I'm just waiting to get the Switch 2 for that specific game, or I haven't found a reason to get one just yet. It looks like Ocarina of Time Remake is going to be that, but unfortunately no demo of that. It was the demo of Star Fox I played, and it was great. It was really great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough, like I said, I played through it multiple times. I even played the different modes on there as well, too. There's a first-person mode that you can play through using the mouse controls on there, and it was so cool. It was so well done. I loved it. I'm really just, I know I went from saying it was pretty good to great to I loved it, because like now as I'm thinking about it more, I really enjoyed it, but I am really looking forward to Star Fox on Switch 2. It is shaping up to be a fantastic game based on what I've seen, based on what I've played from the demo. Maybe the only complaint I have, is that I personally felt like I liked the character models and how they looked much better in game than they did in the pre-rendered cutscenes. The pre-rendered cutscenes looked a little bit like, y'all know the first episode of Smiling Friends where Pim is pretty much kind of just catatonic and not responsive to anything, and they zoom in on him and he looks super hyper realistic to a point where it's disgusting. That's kind of how several of the characters looked for me in the pre-rendered cutscenes. But then when you see them in the in-game engine, not only they look great, but because of the art style of being rendered in real time, I think they actually look better. I preferred that look as opposed to the cutscene one. But yeah, I played through this demo at least twice, and if you have even a passing interest in Star Fox and you have a Switch 2, I'm telling you, you're doing a disservice if you don't try out this demo. It's free. and it's quick. You can finish the demo in like 20 minutes. So I'm very much looking forward to that, but I am still finishing at least one game every month. And the game I end up finishing, it's only been one this month, but Cloudpunk. Now, not Cyberpunk, not Cloudflare, none of that either. Not Cyberpunk. This is Cloudpunk. This is a game I picked up several years ago. It's for the original Switch. And I tried a little bit of it and I enjoyed it, but it was one of those games where you all know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes there's a game where you have it, you play it, and you can recognize it's a good game, but it's just not really resonating with you. It's just not really what you're looking for at that time. But a few months ago, I ended up picking up Cloudpunk again. I had the cartridge already, but I decided to, pop it into my Switch and start playing it again because I said, you know what, I've wanted to come back to this game, and it felt like the right time to do so. And this was such an enjoyable game. Maybe my only regret is not playing it sooner, but at the same time, I think I was just waiting for the right time personally to start enjoying and playing it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a really easy game to play in terms of actual gameplay mechanics and difficulty with it and challenge. There's not really much there, and that's fine. It is a very chill game. Now, the thing that I feel like people won't like is that you're really playing it for the story and the conversation and the communication in there. It is a pixelated cyberpunk dystopian city, but the voice acting on there and the writing, I absolutely loved. I loved the characters. I loved the voice acting. The writing was so well done to the point where this ended up surprising me. I ended up getting choked up at one point. Completely out of nowhere for me. In the game it makes sense, but I just wasn't expecting to get so choked up to a game like this. But it was the right game that I wanted to play at the right time. It was really chill. It was great. It was a game that I could play if I just wanted to, turn off my brain for a little bit and enjoy something. If I just wanted to ride around, fly around, drive around the city, explore, it was really good for that as well too. Maybe the only complaint I really have about it is the performance on there. Now, it does play better on the Switch too, compared to the Switch, but I remember on the original Switch, I feel like it played rough. On the Switch too, it is smoother, but you can tell there's still stutters, there's still hiccups, but the main thing is the loading sequences. When you go from one part of the city to the other, there's these long loading times. Long. And there's nothing to entertain you on there. Not like I need to be stimulated all the time, but it's literally just a black screen, and there's a loading bar and a percentage above the loading bar. That's all. On top of that, the game is also not the most stable. There's not just once, not just twice, there was multiple times I'd be playing this game, and I noticed the longer I played it might not even been that long. It was kind of just unpredictable with how it was. Again, not a developer, but I feel like there was a pretty valid memory leak here, because there were times I'd be playing it, and maybe let's say 5 or 6 sessions of it would be perfectly fine, right? Slow loading times or whatever. Then I would do another session, and I would notice that when I'm loading, it's taken a while. And then I load into another part of the map, and it's taken a while. And then I load into another part of the map, and it's taken a long time. Oh, and then the game crashed. And then sometimes I would reload the game, and the same thing would happen. I would play for 10 or 15 minutes, and then the game would just crash. And then, I'd wait a few days, I'd go back, I'd play it again. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine for weeks. So it's not the most stable experience, at least on Switch, unfortunately. And I believe there's a sequel as well. I do really want to play the sequel. I don't know if that one is on Switch, but Cloudpunk was awesome. It was an awesome game. I actually want to replay it, but I got a bunch of other stuff that I need to play, including Star Fox that will be out here soon. So yeah, it'll be a good time overall. Either way, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. Thankfully, I didn't go over all too much, so I'm going to give you all some time back, even though I took a little bit more. But if you're here, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you making it to the end. If you have not made it to the end of one of these episodes here, what I like to do is I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. If you use that keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Now, typically I like to pick something off my desk or kind of just look around, and you know what? I do have a little bit of a thing here. So let's use the word cassette. Did you ever mess around with cassette tapes? Did you ever have a deck eat your cassette tape? Did you ever have to repair cassette tapes? Do you like cassettes? Do you dislike them? How do you feel about them overall? If you use the term, or I guess the word here, cassette, in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Either way, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully it was entertaining. Hopefully, it got to respectfully take up some of your time to get you from here to there. I'm really hoping so. Either way, if you enjoyed this episode on the video upload, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.